Hi, Assalamualaikum and a very good day, sir. My name is Muhammad Danish bin Jafri. My matrix number 2020-87-1968. So today our group will present regarding the issue of war on drugs impacts toward the children in Philippines. So let's begin. For the first one is introduction. As we all know, the issue itself is the war on drugs, And the second one is the cause. What we are going, who is the cause? What is the cause of these issues happen? Which is the cause is the campaign launched by the president. And what are the effects? As we all know, in this study we are going to find the effects toward the children. That's all for the introduction part. So let's move on to the next. Okay, before we begin into the more in-depth discussion, let's us get to know a brief history about the Philippines. As you can see on the slide is the timeline of the Philippines. And as we all know, the Philippines was an island that located in the east of the Asia. And okay, let's move on to the timeline. The, as you can see on the left is the Spanish flag. The Spanish has took over the Philippines for 300 years, and they have been in Philippines in a very long time. And they have brought so many changes to the Philippines, such as the major changes to the Philippines is the religion, the religion, the Catholic and Christianity religion that they has brought in. Okay, and then you can see in the timeline after a few years, after a long years, in the 1898, the American came and tried to claim the land. During that moment, the Philippines as well has submitted a declaration of independence toward the Spanish, and Spanish were going to consider it. But then, during the 1898, the Spanish-American War suddenly happens, and the war actually resided to the American. This actually has becomes a hope for the Philippines to achieve independence. But then, as soon as the Spanish left the Philippines, the American oppressed any independence movement by the Philippines, which means they denied any movement from the Philippines as well, the Philippines to achieve independence, and they trying to trying to lead the country by themselves. And during the 1916, the American proposed a Jones Act to the Philippines in order for them to achieve independence. It was a 10-year transition plan, and a new drafted constitution will be developed in 1935. And during that moment, the development of the constitution itself is going is going to toward is going toward and until 1941, which is the World War II happens and Japanese invasion to the Philippines. This this immediately again make the Philippines independence stop for a while. And during the 1943 and until 1944, Philippines and American cooperate together to fight the Japanese army, and they actually developing a new constitution at then. And during the 1946, which is the year of the Philippines gain their independence, and the constitution of the constitution 1935 constitution were used to help them in achieve independence. So let's move on to the next slides. Okay, for the next slide is the political structures. As we all know, in every country they have their own political structures in order to make their country or nation in a better way. In Philippines as well, after the Philippines Constitution 1955, they create a new constitution, which is Philippine Constitution 1987, which is become the highest law for them. And in the country as well, there are three bodies, three branch, which is executive, legislative, and judicial. The executive was led by the president, was was and currently led by the president and the advisors. They have the power in managing the execution of law in the country. and the legislative. The legislative is the house that divided by the Congress, which is the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate the Senate is elected by direct voting and consists 24 members, and the House of Representatives consists around 250 members. They have power to monitoring the situation in the country and bring up the issue that happens around the country to the president. The third one is the judicial branch. Philippines introduced the Supreme Court and some lower courts in order to have a fair and established judicial system. This means that Philippines have made a judicial system that would balance it with the law in the country. The selected bodies to manage the jurisdiction system are appointed by the president, and it around consists around 15 members without seeking any view from the Congress. So let's move on to the next slides. Okay, for the next slide is the beginning of war on drugs, or we can call it the history of war on drugs. Okay, when is the war on drugs start? When is the issue happens? Okay, this issue happens during the election of the 16th president of the Philippines, which is after the election itself. Rodrigo Duterte, who won the election on 9th May 2016, and he became the president of the Philippines, and he promised to make in his manifest in his he promised to make the Philippines becomes a better nation. And then as soon as he became the president, he launched a campaign war on drugs to the people. He enforcing the police to kill anyone who involved with the drugs. This actually means that no matter what is their age, what is the people's age, and if anyone involved with the drugs, they will ultimately be killed by the police. And the police itself have a special place as a special right in order to shoot people. And after a few months of his in charge as the president of the Philippines, there was around there the num the num there was there have been recorded about the numbers of fatalities case, which is 101 cases among children from the July 2016 until December 2016. The first stage of his campaign was at the Metro Manila, which is a region that was impoverished neighborhood, and we can assume it was a rural area. And then the campaign was start to grow bigger and spread to every region in the Philippines, including the main cities as well. So okay, I will pass the presentation to my teammates.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Amira Binti Shamlan, and my metric number is 2020-455-382. In order to understand more about the Philippine drug war, we must understand the background of it. The Philippine drug war is an act of genocide. Genocide has exercised its tyrannical ways of eradicating and executing people in the most inhuman way possible. Genocide is a murder or a killing of vast number of people from a particular and specific group or nation with the aim to destroy them. And in the Philippine drug war case, how many has it killed? According to Ben Sauda, 2021, the total number of civilians killed in connection with the war of drugs between July 2016 and March 2019 appears to be between 12,000 and 30,000 civilians were killed. The vast murders were committed by police and vigilantes. killing more than 1,000 people and children a day. Duterte's goal of the war on drugs was to fight corruption and crime, but it seemingly has turned into an act of awful genocide of the people of the Philippines. Despite the murder victims being criminals, Duterte's wicked action plan has committed crimes against humanity. People do want peace, but not with the ways of tyranny. The war on drugs in Philippines is an act of genocide that results high number of deaths of a specific group. The main roots of this genocide are caused by Duterte's ways to decrease the number of crimes in Philippines, but fails tremendously and miserably in inhuman ways possible. Next. There are many people in the Philippines that have fallen victim to the war on drugs policy by Duterte, but the ones who are impacted the most are petty criminals, children, and their families. But since children is our future, it has angered many people and a protest has come to exist to eradicate the war on drugs policy. By the start of the policy in 2016, as many as 122 children had been killed on the streets in the Philippines, and the numbers had risen each day. The citizens and the victims' families were in an outburst of the number of children's deaths that it has led to a protest that caught heat by the media worldwide. And the next, the one that sparked more anger and more controversy is a killing of a 17-year-old Kian de los Santos. It's one of the children that has been killed during the time and has led to a certain conviction. Kian was one of the many children of grieving parents who had lost a child from the killing. It has been stated that the children were on the scene during a shootout by police and the bullets hit them accidentally. Some of the children were deliberately killed according to the report, with police potentially targeting those who had witnessed another killing or claiming they were acting in self-defense. Radcliffe, 2020. Although criminals are also impacted, one can agree that innocent children's lives cannot be wielded by the hands of Duterte's inhuman war on drugs policy. Killing innocent lives, especially children, is a heinous act of crime that is only legal because the leader started the war on drugs policy. Children must be protected by human dignity to preserve humanity in this 21st century. Killing innocent lives is absolutely wrong, and Duterte has shown that what this war on drugs policy has impacted the society in the Philippines. Next, I will pass to the next presenter.
So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day, sir. My name is Fatin Hanani binti Sahimi. My student number is 2020-837-018. And I will be speaking on the impact of the war drugs to children in Philippines. And this part would be highlighted the three main points, which is the impact on the lifestyle, towards the education, and also towards the mental health. Philippines are very well known as a city of a dream as it has a variety of attractions and unique traditions. And despite of the attractions, they also had their own problems and the dark side of their places were also known as a city of death. Pasay City, located in this country familiarly known as the murder city because of the drugs issues. And based on the media report CNN, they stated that according to the Philippines National Police statistic, there have been 7,500 people, including the children, have been murdered by the police as they were being charged for taking drugs and being drug dealers. And moreover, what make it more extreme is the police also had killed the innocent children, and because of their poverty family members, they cannot support for the lawyer to handle the case, and it remained unsolved until now. So this war of drugs had really given lots of impact to society as it changed their daily lifestyle. And based on their CNN report, the trustworthiness among the community members become less because they do not know which one of them are the watchdogs for the government and the police. In this society culture, they also told that they were really scared if one of them are the police or the government of a watchdog, as they can harm their family easily if they found out something that related to the drugs issues in their society. Maria was one of the family victims who her family had been shot by the police as her husband being alleged as a drug dealer and died with their 5-year-old son in their home. Maria stated that since the incident, she cannot express her anger because there's nothing that she can do, and the cases, the family cases, is remain unsolved until now. So let's move on to my next point. So my next point is the loss of respect towards the leader, and which is I'm going to talk about a case of Kian de los Santos. On the night of August 2017. A 17-year-old boy, Kian de los Santos, has been murdered by the police officers, the 3 police officers who have been accused him as a drug user. Based on the local media reporter, they reported on that particular night that poor boy had been dragged and shot by the police officers who had conducted an anti-drug operation in the Caloocan Metro Manila. And these cases being really controversial issues as the police reports are not matched with the witness statement. Not only teenagers and adults being targeted and being the victims of this war, the children also being involved in these issues too. Besides, in the media report, the president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, said that this brutal drug war has not spared children. So many children have been affected. So for the mental health impact, afterwards these incidents, the children had suffered from trauma and mental health issue as they seen the unforgettable moment when their relative died in front of them. So I'm going to share the 2 cases that I found as I'm going through these issues. The first case is about Jennifer M. From Payatas in Quezon City. During the incident, she was only 12 years old on that moment when her father being shot by the cops. The children being forced to get out from the house as the police officers entered the house. Jennifer was there on that time. She remembered it clearly as she hugged her father and said that in front of the officers, do not harm her father. And then she were being thrown to the ground by the cops and shot her father. And as a result, Jennifer had suffered with trauma until now. She will always having a nightmare about the incident, and her hands were also shaking after a loud sounds. The next case is about Renato L. children. These 3 siblings had been lost their beloved father when they were younger. Their father had been killed by the cops in December 2016 in Mandaluyong City. These siblings had been suffering with a mental illness and they were always experiencing a psychological distress. They also having a depression and trauma as they had been witnessed their father had been shot by the cops 10 times. The younger brother also being hit on his leg and make him traumatized, and also he will be easily to get angry with his surrounding. So these 2 cases really does show that this brutal war will really impact the children a lot. So I guess that is all from me. I'll pass to my next team members. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and selamat sejahtera. My name is Muhammad Amullah and my matrix number is 20209629883. So in this section, I'm going to explain a little bit about the impact of war on drug on education of the children in the Philippines. So as we know, education is essential in the well-being and development of not only individuals, but societies and even country. Because if there is a high rate of educated people in such countries, there's also a high chance of the country achieving greater success. But this is not the case to most children that live in the midst of war on drugs in Philippines, where not many children would have the chance to get a proper education. And there has been countless Filipino children that have been forced to drop out of schools, begin working and live on the streets as a result of this death. And even as the family members of the deceased, there has been no compensation for the victims' families, and there are no particular programs in place to meet the needs of these children. Many of these children have experienced psychological discomfort, financial struggles, and in the worst case scenario, the loss of family members. Due to having an impoverished life, children have been living in the streets independently, with scarcely getting any sorts of support for sustenance or educations. There have been tiny bits of organizations that tries to support as many children but couldn't afford, because there is a mass of children living in poverty currently. But with this increasing poverty and trauma, this has forced many children to live on the streets and start obligated to work, to their own work. And because they couldn't even afford to pay fees for schools, universities, and in pursuit of any kind of education. And some who have lost family members have encountered bullying in schools and even in societies. And as we know, obviously, some were forced to live in streets. Moving on to drug testing in schools. So the Philippines Drug Enforcement Agency, which is PDEA, have been extended drug tests in schools for students and teachers that could be harming the safety and education rights. And student and even elementary school students are obligated to undergo these sorts of drug testings in schools. And a report by CNN Philippines mentioned that the government views random drug testing for students as a wholly health problem by providing appropriate treatments to those who test positive for harmful drug use, assisting students in stopping further use of abuse of the substance. It goes with how the tests perform, because it may constitute degrading treatment. It will prevent children from going to educational institutions such as schools, universities, and it will place risks and deprive their rights to education for just a trivial reason that is actually not that is actually unrelated to drug suspicion. So it places a high risk for the students' right in education. Moving on to conclusion. As for conclusion, the war on drugs policy in the Philippines has violated not just human rights, but the social, economical, lifestyles, mental health, and education of the children in the Philippines. Many have been pushed against the wall and deliberately killed due to a tyrant's way of handling that country. And it has impacted many people, not just in the Philippines, but also globally due to the realization that of Duterte's act of genocides that cannot be tolerated and has to be put an end to it. And it should be served with justice. So the question lies is how long will it take, even though there's been countless protests, countless rebellions to show disagreements towards this action. How long will it take for it to stop? And how many notorious or famous people should barge in and say that it's not right? That's not a right way to solve things with such violence. So, as a closure for this presentation, I would want to share just a brief clip of the life of the children in the Philippines currently. Thank you very much.